Just a guru. That's
I'm
fun.
told who knew Meghan before Meghan knew Harry.
Yes. I knew Meghan very well.
Right.
I invited her to come to the UK to host a big charity event called the Global Gift Gala a few years ago. And she was fabulous. You know, spent a lot of time together.
So this is before Meghan was famous. Well, she was in Suits at the time.
Yeah, she was in Suits at the time. Right. But that was it. You know, people recognised her, but only people actually who worked in the city. It was kind of funny. You know, we go down Bond Street and no one bat an eyelid.
Because everyone in the city watched...
In the city, they all watched Suits. So she had this cult following even then.
I mean, do you remember, Lizzie, when it was announced that Harry had this new girlfriend called Meghan Markle, and most people were like Googling, who is Meghan Markle? Well, obviously Nick knew who she was, but not many other people did.
Yeah, no, I didn't watch Suits at the time, but did quickly.
Yes.
We did quickly, didn't we, as a bit of research.
Rachel Zane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you watch Suits before?
No, not before. I think I made it sort of homework. And haven't you kind of got therefore, Nick, a bit of a... Shall we say Piers Morgan story? Are we allowed to call it that?
I mean, listen, I think that people evolve, and I don't have any grudge in any way.
Right.
I think, you know...
So Meghan needed you and then didn't?
Meghan needed you and didn't.
Okay.
You know, I introduced her to lots of agents, model agents. I sort of really ingratiated her into the London life, which I really enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
Because she was a fantastic person to be around. And we kept on, you know, texting each other for quite a while. And even when she was with Harry, you know, she was still texting me. And then after a while, you know, we kind of petered off. I did what I did, and she went off to become a Duchess.
One of the most famous people in the world, of course. But Piers Morgan always tells the story of being ghosted by her, you know, like she reached out to him. But this was 2014.
Yes.
And I was looking back at actually some of the interviews Meghan did at the time when she was referring to the UK as having cold weather, but the people are warm, and that she'd like to hang around for a while. And that was an event that you took her to.
That was, a big charity event I took her to. I took her to various different parties, etc.
Yeah.
We used to go clothes shopping. It was really good fun. And, you know, I actually didn't have
I used to go clothes shopping with Meghan Markle.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
But, you know, the funny thing is I also took her to see some agents, and we had some really fun times. And one agent, I mean, it's crazy, actually turned around to her and said, I think you should be in pantomime. You know, when a man plays a woman plays a man, we make a great prince.
And being American, she said, what is pantomime?
What is that? And then he went, do you know David Hasselhoff? And she went, yes. Well, he makes a lot of money in 3 weeks. And then about 4 years later, the same person calls me up and says, do you remember that delightful girl that came to my office? I said, yes, a future princess. There we go.
Yes.
A real one.
She's not a prince in a pantomime.
Exactly.
A real one.
In real life.
You guys, let's get into it, because Piers Morgan just got publicly embarrassed again. And this time it happened right in front of ITV's royal editor, Chris Shipp, who couldn't even hide how amazed he was by what came out during the discussion. Now, this isn't just another case of Piers being salty about Meghan Markle. This time, the truth came out live on air, completely exposing his long-running narrative that Meghan ghosted him out of nowhere. And the best part? The story didn't come from gossip. It came straight from someone who actually knew Meghan Markle long before she ever met Prince Harry publicist and PR expert Nick Ede. So here's what happened. On ITV's Talking Royal, royal editor Chris Shipp was joined by Lizzie Robinson and Nick Ede, who casually dropped a few bombshells that completely shattered Piers Morgan's long-cherished tale. Nick explained that he was the one who invited Meghan to the UK years ago to host the Global Gift Gala, a huge charity event. And from the start, he described Meghan as fabulous, kind and fun to be around. That already contradicts the bitter cold image people like Piers Morgan and certain British tabloids have spent years trying to paint of her. Nick reminded everyone that Meghan wasn't some unknown actress desperate for fame, like Piers always claims. She was already successful, starring in Suits, and had a devoted fan base. He even said that back then, people who worked in the city already knew her well. They'd stop her in the streets because Suits was a hit among professionals. So when the world pretended to Google who Meghan Markle is after her relationship with Prince Harry was revealed, Nick had already known her for years through real charity work, not bar gossip. Nick went on to describe how Meghan was down to earth, genuinely warm and curious about British culture. He recalled how Meghan loved that the weather was cold, but the people were warm. This is the kind of insight that shows exactly why Harry fell in love with her. She wasn't chasing titles, she was simply being herself, kind, ambitious, and engaged with good causes. Chris Shipp even smiled as Nick shared these memories, and you could tell he was impressed. He looked genuinely amazed by how normal, friendly and generous Meghan was long before she ever became the Duchess of Sussex. Then came the best part, the moment that destroyed Piers Morgan's long-standing claim. Chris Shipp asked Nick if Meghan had really ghosted Piers. Nick's response was pure class. He didn't attack Piers. He simply said, "I don't hold grudges. People evolve. Meghan needed me for connections back then, and when she built her life, she moved on." Translation? Meghan didn't ghost anyone, she just outgrew people who wanted to use her name for clout. And here's the kicker. Nick confirmed that he and Meghan stayed in touch even after she started dating Prince Harry. So while Piers was crying about being cut off, Meghan was just living her life and surrounding herself with genuine people. Remember, Piers Morgan has been telling this ghosting story since 2016, milking it on every talk show that would let him rant. He claimed Meghan used him for fame, then dumped him the second she met Harry. But according to Nick, that narrative is totally false. Piers never had a real friendship with Meghan. He had a one-sided media fantasy. She didn't ghost him. She just didn't owe him anything. And the way Nick gently exposed that truth without being messy left Piers looking like the bitter ex who can't move on. Chris Shipp's reaction said it all. As Nick told the story, you could see Chris leaning forward, eyebrows raised, clearly surprised. He even let out a small laugh when Nick mentioned shopping with Meghan and introducing her to London life. Because it completely humanised Meghan. She wasn't plotting her way into royal circles, she was just another young woman making friends and building a career. And for once we saw someone on British television talk about Meghan in a positive, honest way, without spin, without bitterness, and without the usual smear tactics. Nick's stories painted Meghan exactly how her real friends always describe her: warm, funny, approachable, and effortlessly charming. He even said they went clothes shopping together, and that she was always curious, polite, and down to earth. This completely contrasts the cold caricature that critics like Piers Morgan, Dan Wootton, and others have pushed for years. At one point, Nick recalled an agent suggesting Meghan try pantomime theatre. He laughed and said she didn't even know what that was, because it's such a British thing. And years later, that same agent called Nick saying, "Remember that delightful girl you brought to my office? She's a future princess now." Talk about full circle. So let's be clear, this interview humiliated Piers Morgan without even mentioning his name too much. Because every word Nick said quietly dismantled the image Piers has spent years selling, that Meghan was fake, manipulative, and ungrateful. Instead, we saw the truth. She was talented, respectful, and already thriving long before she met Harry. Piers wasn't betrayed. He was just never part of her real circle to begin with. And that's what makes his obsession so embarrassing now. Chris Shipp, usually quite neutral, even seemed impressed by how gracefully Nick spoke about Meghan. You could tell that for once, British television allowed a bit of truth to slip through the crack, and it completely contradicted the usual anti-Sussex narrative. Let's be honest, Piers Morgan's entire brand for the past few years has revolved around Meghan Markle. Every time she breathes, he finds a way to take offence. But moments like this expose how ridiculous his obsession has become. Because while he's ranting, Meghan's building empires, from her as ever lifestyle brand to humanitarian work and global advocacy. She's thriving, she's respected, she's loved. And when you hear people who actually knew her describe her kindness, her energy and her drive, it's obvious the Meghan the tabloids attack doesn't even exist. So next time Piers Morgan starts another rant, just remember, even people who knew Meghan personally have nothing but positive things to say. She didn't ghost anyone, she simply grew. And that's what truly irritates people like Piers Morgan. They can't stand to see a confident, successful woman rise above their bitterness. If you're proud of Meghan for always taking the high road, hit that like button and subscribe for more Sussex truth right here on Sussex Squaddies. Because over here we deal in facts, not tabloids.